Welcome to Colombia. There are millions of tourists come to visit this beautiful country every year. We are known for the scenic views, hospitable residents, and amazing food. However, few people got to know the climate change in Colombia. We are global firemen, and we will introduce you about the climate analysis in Colombia. Our purpose is to let our dear visitors learn the climate system in Colombia and help us to contribute to climate protection. I am the host, Qiyue, and we have Li Jia, Yan Kun, and Xiaoyu in our think tank. Here is the vulnerability in Colombia. The hazard runoff levels rise in coastal region and many other regions. Exposure had prevalent floods and landslides in East Flatland and may cause water distribution problems and a deficit of water in a social edema in Andean region. Sensitivity, economic dimension, a greater risk of crop flooding as well as other natural events that affect agriculture production like windstorm and hailstorms. In ecological dimension, a good portion of the agro-ecosystem of the country is vulnerable to increased soil erosion and desertification changes in hydrological systems. In social dimension, water distribution problems bring no security to citizens. The second vulnerability, global warming makes the sea level keep rising. Millions of inhabitants are at risk of exposure to flooding in coastal zones. Sensitivity, economical dimension, industrial settlements and crops will be badly influenced by it. In ecological dimension, water sources would also be vulnerable to seawater intrusion. In social dimension, many tourist attractions and tourism-related infrastructure may disappear. The third vulnerability, average temperature on the Earth rises. Increased temperature leads to the shortage of water. Also, rising temperature influences the growth of plants and increases in the impact of vector-transmitted diseases. Sensitivity. In economic dimension, water shortage affected the production of agriculture. Diseases affected health of workers, which decreased the production of factories. In ecological dimension, increased temperature influences the growing period of plants. Also, diseases transmit among animals that some species are facing extinction. Social dimension. Diseases transmission will make citizens feel unsafe. Tourism will be influenced seriously. Health condition and living quality decrease in urban contexts. The next vulnerability. The median temperature of the Pacific Ocean keeps going up. Snow-capped areas and moorlands reduce. Corals may become faded because of the higher seawater temperature. Sensitivity in economic dimension. Revenue of fishing industry may greatly decrease. In ecological dimension, biodiversity and fishing resources may also be influenced. Ecosystem in the ocean will be damaged. Residents who do fishing as living in coastal region become less and less. Vulnerability 5. Increased risk of drought and floods may lead to tsunami, strong rainfall, tropical storm, and other natural disaster, and this disaster will further deteriorate the living conditions and the quality of life of displaced and poor populations. Sensitivity. Natural disasters will damage the living settlements, factories. Extreme events like strong rainfall, floods will seriously damage the animal and plant species. Floods will affect water quality. Tourists decrease and the citizens feel unsafe also.
Besides vulnerabilities, we also have some opportunities on climate change. For opportunity one, on ecological changes, regional maldistribution of water resources will make people find a new place to live. This exposure on business movements. On culture dimensions, people will bring different cultures together. And on economic dimensions, populations migrations will bring much workforce and economic benefits. On ecological dimension, people will realize the importance of protecting environments. They will try to find a way to slow the climate change and protect water resources. So for opportunity two, the productivity of crops and coffee beans have been increased because of the rising temperature. This influenced the development of high-tech in the agricultural industries. On cultural dimension, traditional farming would be replaced by a more efficient way. On economic dimension, high output of agricultural production promotes the development of economy and the trade and export trades. On sociological dimension, the decrease of famishment and hunger problem. So for opportunity three, government tries to make protection of the environment, slow the climate change, and reduce the side effect of climate change to citizens. So this influence will affect and announce some related policies to deal with the climate change issues and build energy-safe systems. Organize three main institutions to deal with the issues. On the culture dimension, some policies will strengthen the citizens' recognition of climate change and help them gain knowledge about climate change. On the political dimension, the action of government can make citizens trust the government more. On the economic dimension, the government of Colombia built some energy-saving system in Andean region and some system using natural energy like tidal energy, wild energy. These will decrease the cost of fossil fuels and use natural energy to make more efficient outcomes. For opportunity four, rising carbon dioxide raises the pH and temperature of the ocean. This will influence some number of the certain species that will increase their numbers, like starfish. Also, on economic dimension, increased production of certain fish can make fishermen get more profit. On social dimension, various sea creatures can attract more tourists, and it is an opportunity for tourism development. On ecological dimension, protect certain species from extinction and keep the biodiversity of the environment. So for opportunity five, the government will think of different solutions of climate change problem. It is an opportunity for the government to create some more innovative plans. This will affect some new release plans like new climate plan, INDC, and some announced policies like state-of-art regulations. Political dimension, improve the international position of the country. And on economic dimension, people around the world will know more about Colombia. It is an opportunity for business development. And on cultural dimension, because of the population of Colombia, the culture of the country will be spread out to the world.
Now I will introduce you about the history of economy in Colombia. In pre-colonial era, predominantly cultivated maize, grass, local fruit and vegetables like yuca and potato. Managed the Colombian climate and geography to develop planting technique using terraces. The indigenous people were avid hunters and consumed local fauna. During the colonial era, it began to be colonized by Spain in 1499. The Colombia's economy was extractive and exploitative, relying heavily on cheap native labor. The domestic industry was constrained during colonial period, and the colony functioned as a source of primary primary materials and the consumer of manufactured goods. After colonial period, the modern economy emerged after independence in 1819. The wealth was concentrated in agriculture and commerce. The economy at that time was based primarily on mining, agriculture, and cattle raising, with contributions made by local artisans and merchants. And before Industrial Revolution, socio-economic changes proceeded slowly, and the economic system functioned as a loosely related group of regional producers rather than as a national entity. It based on coffee and other agriculture exports. After Industrial Revolution, tobacco and coffee exports industries developed, greatly enlarging the merchants class and leading to population expansion and the growth of cities. Coffee boom brought attendant benefits of transportation, particularly railroads, communication infrastructure.
So this page demonstrates the fossil fuel energy consumption in Colombia. Represents the percentage of fossil fuel energy consumption as a percentage in total, besides any other kinds of energy. So this page lists the detail of the fossil fuel consumptions in Colombia for last few decades. So we can see it has a steady increase in last about 40 years in Colombia. So the current emission, carbon dioxide emission are those stemming from the burning of fossil fuels, and those manufacturers of cement. They include carbon dioxide produced during consumptions of solid, liquid, and gas fuels and gas flaring. This page has the latest value, historical data, forecast charts, statistics, and economic calendars, and news for CO2 emissions in Colombia. So we can see it also has a increase in charts.
Okay, well, Colombia loses 2,000 kilometer degree of forest annually to deforestation, according to United Nations in 2003. This has a profound ecological impact. Colombia is extremely rich in biodiversity, with 10% of the world's species, making it the second most biologically diverse country on Earth. So one of the main cause of deforestation in Colombia is the National Plan Pacifico, which is intended to raise revenue to develop the economy. The plan includes exploitation of Colombia's rainforests for extraction of precious natural resource for exportation. So around 2.2% of the total forest area in Colombia began to be removed each year for wood and to make paper, or to provide clearings needs for palm plantations and agricultural production and commercial shrimp farming. Now I'm going to talk about the lifestyles in Colombia. The population of Colombia is approximately 46 million, and most of them are mestizos. The rest of them are 3% Afro-Colombians and 1% native Indians. The city people generally live better than farmers. The middle class jobs include businessmen and lawyer, and working class jobs include teachers, waiters, and shop owners. Usually the middle class and working class live in the cities while less people live in the suburb area. They work on agricultural production. Now I'm going to talk about the vulnerable people affected by climate change. The first one is the senior citizens, and the second one is children. The third one is low-income people, and fourth one is people with disabilities. The final one is people who live without areas to air conditioning. So to these people, we have some treatments. The first one is reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and second one is more effective, safer, and more sustainable development projects. The third one is decreasing the vulnerability of the land due to the negative impacts of climate change, and the fourth one is increasing the capacity of communities to withstand extreme events. So what about trade-offs?
The first one is to build wind power station on the Andean highlands area. What we can gain from this one is the variety of topography in Colombia enable us to use the wind energy reasonably. It's total clean, sustainable, and efficient. But the last is huge wind turbine may attack and kill the seabirds or other species passing by. So the second solution is to build tidal power station by the coast. What we gain from this one is since Colombia is nearby the Pacific Ocean and Caribbean Sea, tidal power can be utilized to generate electricity for cities around. There is no pollution at all. The last is the project will occupy the habitat of people and animals settled by the shore. People have to move to interior part. This will make some city overcrowded. Okay, now we'll continue about the trade-offs. The third one is regional environment. Authorities are using guidelines for land use planning and restoration, which CI helped develop alongside NGO and governmental partners to help the most vulnerable high mountain area of the country build resilience against climate change impacts. So what we gain is this is a very safe way to protect and resolve the problem which happened in this high mountain area. What we lost is it takes a long time to do the adjustment if some part get around. The fourth one is focus on the water supply assumption, set limitation and rewards to use the water resource reasonably. What we gain is it is very easy to carry out and can be replicated in other areas. What we lost is some citizens may not be willing to cooperate. The last one is to generalize the public bike to reduce the use of vehicle. What we gain is less emission of automobile exhaust, which is one of the greenhouse gases, improve the situation of bad traffic jam. What we lost is a lot of limitation due to the varied topography. Also, this program is very expensive and pricey. So for the next part, we are going to introduce the Colombia's involvement in UNFCCC and Kyoto. So now we are going to primarily talk about the day we signed the UNFCCC and Kyoto Protocol. So we signed the Climate Change Convention in 13 June 1992, and the date of ratification is 22 March 1995. And the date of entry into force is 20 June 1995. About the Kyoto Protocol, we didn't sign it, but we do have a date of ratification, which is 30 November 2001. The date of entry into Kyoto Protocol is 16 February 2005. Well, for the political platform, we have first, Colombia is the world's third most vulnerable country to climate change. The second one is first South American country to release new climate plan ahead of Paris. A third one is first national communication to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. The fourth one is Colombia became the first South American country to release its intended nationally determined contribution, or INDC, ahead of United Nations COP21 climate talks in Paris. The fifth one is Colombia's previous international pledge made in 2009 consisted of a series of mitigation actions instead of national emission target. The sixth one is in its new climate plan since 2010, the country advanced actions such as reaffirming its commitment to reduce deforestation, but within a broader objective to limit overall national emissions. The last one is Colombia's INDC adopts a national economy-wide emissions reduction target for the first time, aiming to reduce greenhouse gas emission 20% below projected business as usual, what we call BAU emission by 2030, with international support, this reduction target would increase to 30%. Okay, now we're going to share some very important moments in Colombia. The first one is about UNFCCC. There is also the possibility that Colombia will increase its ambition should the government be granted further support from developed country or other able to do so. This approach is consistent with Colombia's negotiating position at the UNFCCC. The second one is also about the UNFCCC. We find it promising that the government is keen on presenting a technically sound INDC using the existing analytical infrastructure of climate policy as its base. The third one is about the Paris COP. Fortunately, the government has specific plans to launch a website for the process of INDC development and will display Colombia's role in the road to Paris. The next one is in addition, in 2008, Colombia and the United States signed a memorandum of understanding to advance clean renewable energy policies. The last one is the government of Colombia is also embarking on an ambitious domestic private-public initiative to harness in sustainable ways its vast wealth of energy resource.
So now we are going to take a look at the programs that Colombia participated in the past years. We have already signed the reduced emission from deforestation and forest degradation project, which we call Bio REDD+. And also another one is the joint implementation, which we call JI.
This part is about confliction in Colombia. In Colombia, agriculture is the main contributor to greenhouse gas emissions, representing 76% and 45% of total emissions respectively. One of the major issues is beef cattle production, which is both an important source of income to the local economies and a major contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. So how did Colombia keep the economic development and greenhouse gas emission? We signed an agreement which is called climate change and agriculture in Latin America and the Caribbean to find new options to relieve the acceleration of climate change. The next part is about the part of the world of Colombia. So far, Colombia has already joined these international organizations that contributed to the climate change list below. First is the CDM project and reduced emissions from deforestation and forest degradation project, and Paris Agreement and the United Nations framework. The contribution of Colombia has implemented climate change, means streamlining the project between January 2009 and 2010, with a total budget of US dollars like 100,000, and a work team comprised of 4 individuals. This part that we conclude some recommendations. First, on the implementation side, we can also planning to increase its cooperation on mitigation and adaptation with other developing countries. For example, a workshop was held earlier this year with other American countries to discuss and brainstorm like the INDC adaptation components. Furthermore, Colombia will consolidated work strategy with universities and research in the climate technology center and network, and will continue its work with the private sector on climate finance. And the cost of cooperation with other countries needs financial cost. Uh, for example, work with developing country, Colombia needs financial support to develop the relation between two countries. Developed countries may be more strict with developing countries on financial demand. Finally, we are said that the benefits of the recommendation will improve the relationship with other countries cooperated. For the second recommendations, Colombia can send out the scientists to the developed country to research about GHG reduction and mitigation of climate change, and import and learn the advanced technology and science from other countries to slow the climate change. For instance, use more green energy to replace burning fossil fuel. Like the cost, we can improve the investment on education field to train more scientists in order to cooperate with other nations to solve climate change. The benefits, Colombian scientists can invent and create more advanced technologies to slow the climate change. The third recommendations, I will say that Colombia can definitely take use of their geographical characteristics to exploit new clean energy resources, since there are different types of which refers to the highland, lowland, rainforest, and coastal. Colombia can put more attention on the establishment of tidal power, wind power, and according to the different districts. Taking place, the use of traditional energy resources will greatly reduce the emission of greenhouse. The cost, the advanced energy source will cost more than fossil fuel, which would yield less normal energy source in a short period of time. For the benefits, the advanced energy source like wind power and tidal power be used for longer periods than fossil fuel and with no pollution of the environment. This part I will introduce the future development of Colombia. Colombia implemented that climate change mainstreaming project, which is to take care of the main vulnerabilities. The program has already stepped to its fourth stage. Our country is contributing to the climate change issues. However, Colombia is still concentrating on the problems and report the problems. We recommended our government invest this money on encouraging citizens to care low carbon lifestyles and enhance the awareness of climate change. We don't only need to find the problem, but also resolve the problems. We believe that the power of the message was materially. Climate change affects everyone, and this is a puzzle that needs everyone's help. This is exactly what the Colombian government need to pay attention to. This part is what vulnerable groups. First is the investment required to secure the land rights for indigenous communities. the estimated economic benefits for 20-year period. And importantly, people with disabilities and their families need adaptation, and through participation include people with disabilities, representatives of some organizations like the NGOs and the DPOS.
For climate change, repeat endeavors. Colombia is trying to cooperate with other countries to deal with these hot issues. Overall, we are still developing and improving. We have great confidence to perform better and develop better in the future.